to Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Nothing But Truth.
On AFR Talk.
Welcome back. Professor Angelo Codevilla, extraordinary, brilliant guy, obviously. The ruling class watch, and he brought up SAT scores, and oh, burn those records. Those things are biased. I know. Well, I also know that people take tests in a different way, and I get that as well, but I think the problem with me was I did not study. I was looking to get out of those tests as much as I could. It's true. I had a million excuses, too. Still have them. Still just own up to it. You didn't study. You didn't study, Crane. All right, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk. It's amazing what happens when you let things slide and then you have to make things up. Everybody talks about their senior year in high school. Oh, it was easy. It was great and everything. And not when you sloughed off for the 3 years previous, which brings about accountability. Always accountability. You're going to be brought to your record, but people do appreciate when people change and adjust, and people are forgiving in that way. One thing that is exploited is America's compassion. And the way our feelings and our emotions are exploited could be looked at through the lens of the racial grievance industry. We have Larry Elder, who is a radio talk show host, author of Top 10 Things You Can't Say in America, or 10 Things You Can't Say in America. I think he wrote a follow-up to that book. I read it a while back, but I have had the privilege to talk to Larry and know Larry. Haven't talked to him in years, but bottom line, you can't meet a nicer guy, also just an extraordinary man. I mean, rarely would I talk about another talk show host. I don't listen to other talk radio. I just don't do it. I stay away from talk television as much as I can. So I don't want to sound like anybody else. And I want to get my ideas organically. Nonetheless, when I hear something that is good and extraordinary, especially in light of the debate that we're having, when it comes to the continued focus and obsession of the George Zimmerman case and race and racism in America, I always like to bring up substance. I talked about Allen West on Friday and said, look, here's just one statement. Boom, knocks it out of the park. Substance pretty much dismisses the entire racial grievance movement and explains it. Larry Elder was being interviewed and debating Jahmoo Green, a liberal commentator, and this was on Geraldo. And Geraldo had them on to debate the issue of race in America and racism in America. And Larry Elder, I'm just getting a section for you, starts to talk about accountability, and what really is wrong is not racism in America, but as Heather McDonald said this past week on this very show, it's the breakdown of the American family, specifically in the case of race specific, as they are talking about. He talked about the black families out of wedlock birth. He starts, the clip begins with a quote from Tupac Shakur. Geraldo follows up with him, and, roll it.
I'm quoting that well-known neocon Tupac Shakur, who said, I know for a fact if I had had a father, I would have had some discipline and I would have been more confident. End of quote.
Well, but you're not saying that the upset over Trayvon's death is irrelevant or insignificant. I mean, he was an unarmed kid killed on his way home from the 7-Eleven.
It was a tragedy, but it's also a misdirection to suggest that somehow black people need to be feared being tracked down by a non-black person. One more time, the stats are that 95% of the homicides are committed by other black people. When there are these violent interracial crimes between blacks and whites, 90% to 80% of the time, it is a black perpetrator and a white victim. Very rarely is it the other way around, which is why the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman thing was such an aberration.
So there you have, what I want you to do is say, take out the substance of that argument and put it on a scale. And now Jammu Green's response from the left, roll it.
Okay, but Larry, this is where I'm going to have to diverge a little bit, because we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to acknowledge the racial inequality in this country that has led to conditions that create this type of crime situation in Chicago. We also have to acknowledge the criminal justice system and the bias, the racial and ethnic bias that exists within the criminal justice system. Geraldo, 2004, the American Bar Association did a complete study and came up with very specific recommendations on what this country needed to do to deal with racial and ethnic bias in our criminal justice system. States have not even acknowledged it. The federal government, our Department of Justice, has not looked at this, has not implemented these pieces. That exists. So we have to also focus on that, the issues that led to Trayvon Martin and the black on black crime.
I gotcha. Take it easy there, Jammu. I got to move on. All right, so you have the substance there. Okay, you have the study by a leftist organization of the ABA, and you go back and look at some of their analysis and as well as their methodology in their studies and also their grading of judicial nominees. I mean, ABA speaks for itself. If you're going to go by the ABA, fine. Take that. But take into account that she wasn't recognizing, okay, what are the causes? The breakdown of the family. This is not color specific. The breakdown of the family. Then we talk about what are we going to do to fix the problems that ail one community or all communities. And this is where liberalism thrives in the promise, but fails, utterly fails, and actually incentivizes and exacerbates the problem with their so-called solutions. Education, you give freedom to the parent, school choice, but the teachers' unions won't let that happen. They don't want that. They're a block of power. Are you seeing the ruling class here? Are you seeing how this lines up of what Professor Codevilla talked about? The other part to that is you talk about health care and what will bring a better health care system. Certainly not more government and more regulation. But the one thing that we talk about time and time again is what is the true antidote to the disease of an overarching, so-called compassionate federal government, unconstitutional federal government. It is freedom and accountability, and the accountability comes to us of stepping up and saying, no, you will not. You will not. We do not make the bargain with you because we know it's a Faustian bargain to say you need to step in for the social safety net. Absolutely not. You'll only exacerbate the problem. You'll only grow the problem, and you'll grow dependence. You'll kill the American dream. As we started out with that topic, we conclude with it. One last thing. Tomorrow we have a very special tribute to Bud Day. Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Kakulu will be with us. American hero has passed. Rest in peace, Bud Day. We will have an exclusive interview with Colonel Kakulu. Also, a special report on Christians in the Muslim world with Dr. Bruce Thornton. That coming up tomorrow. Crane Durham, live with honor in your life. Know that God loves you. God made you. He loves you right where you're at. You're worth it. AFR Talk.